First of all, could you let me know if you can hear me okay? I just want to make sure my computer settings are good. Can you just give me a thumbs up or something? Okay, let me just see. You can hear Russell? You can hear Russell? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so this is kind of about back to basics nutrition, but also here to support your experience with your training at Farrell's. So we want to make sure that we're fueling fat loss if necessary, building our lean muscle, and of course, boosting our energy. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And then I will just introduce myself a little bit here. So my name is Tiffany. I'm a board certified and licensed nutritionist and I help people out with their medical nutrition therapy. So, what that means is basically symptoms that you may be struggling with. A lot of those things can be supported with proper nutrition in a therapeutic way. And that's what I do to help people with their symptoms. I work a lot with women who are dealing with hormone changes. I work with a lot of people who deal with thyroid problems myself. I got into this due to thyroid cancer, and nutrition was a big player in getting me back to functioning when I was not functional at all. So that's how this all came to be. But one of the things that I work with a lot in my practice is working with people dealing with their body composition. And when we embark on, intense exercises, we have to fuel the body properly because we are already at baseline very stressed out as a society, and we need to support that process as well as when we're working out and just living day-to-day life because it is impacted when we are eating poorly. All right. So this is where we need to talk about this to help optimize your process with Farrell's. So a lot of times I'm hearing people say, I'm working super hard, I'm doing all the right things, I'm exercising, I'm eating right, I'm sleeping right, all those things. And I'm just not seeing the results that I'm hoping to see. So, with all the effort you are putting in with your program, and hoping to recomp your body. Maybe it's just pure weight loss that you want. But I would probably say that majority of you that are going through working out and resistance training and all of that, you are looking at building muscle, right? And losing fat. So when this happens, people end up by not losing the fat. They have energy crashes. They're constantly hungry, despite doing what they feel like everything is, that everything that they're doing is right. And so it's not really about the effort, it's about your foundation of nutrition. So what we'll talk today is more about what actually drives fat loss. It's not just calories alone, how to eat for energy and performance because you are performing. And I'm not sure where you are in your journey with this, if you've already started your 10 weeks or if you're in the middle of it. I'm not exactly sure. But what we need to do is to optimize your nutrition for that energy and performance. And we'll talk about the five things that matter the most. These are the same core foundations that I talk about with my people all the time, every single day. And we have to dial these things in to help support everything we're doing when it comes to recomping. And then, more importantly, maybe, is to what things you need to stop doing immediately. Okay, so fat loss isn't just about calories in versus calories out. And I would say this applies even if you're not looking to lose a bunch of weight. If you're looking at recomping, all of this matters. We have to focus more than just, calories in, calories out, because that is kind of what we've been led to believe over the years, that that's all you need to do is just how much you burn at the gym or whatever, and compared to how much you actually are consuming in your foods. So what we have to understand though is that hormones matter. Even for men, a lot of times it's considered or thought to be that it only affects women, but that's just not true. Blood sugar matters way more than you think, and you do not have to have a diabetes diagnosis to have that be a factor. Your muscle matters and the stress matters. So that is something that or I should say, we underestimate how much it affects us and our health goals. It gets in the way, basically. So your body isn't just a calculator. It'd be really, really nice if we could do the calories in, calories out formula and have it all work out magically. I think I've seen that once or twice um, in my practice where it seems to kind of work out for people. And then just in real life, I feel like I have never seen that. Maybe one other time. It just seems like where people say, "Oh, I just, you know, ate 500 calories less and I started to lose a pound a week." Like I've seen that rarely happen. Okay. So your body, like I said, is not a calculator. It's a whole system and everything has to kind of work together so that it can release the weight and recomp and build the muscle. So here are your foundations, okay, for nutrition. We need to stabilize that blood sugar. You have to prioritize the protein, reduce inflammation, support your gut health, and increase nutrient density of the foods you're eating for that nutrient intake. All right. So, one of the first things I would say, without even going on to the next part of this, is if you are a person who is embarking on this 10-week training, I think it's a 10-week cycle. I don't know if it's changed or not, and you've never really looked at your food from a nutrient density capacity. And if you look at your diet and you eat out, like a lot of times, 50% of the time, if you buy quick fix packaged processed foods on the regular, just to control calories or something like that, then the first thing I would do is start working on making sure you're eating more whole foods more often. So, as a simple example, if you could just start with this. If you eat out 3 times a week in restaurants, try to take 2 of those times in restaurants and cook foods like I'm showing you here. Whole foods that you can identify what the individual item is versus something that comes from a package or frozen or something that's cooked in restaurants, which we know have like, not the greatest, not all the time, but not the greatest oils and not the greatest ingredients and that kind of thing. So we need to look at what we're eating, the quality of what we're eating, and that will help set you up in the right direction for making all this a lot easier. So just start with something and then improve upon it, right? Wherever you're at, it's okay. Just start with that and make it better. Okay, so the first thing we need to understand is the difference between macro and micronutrients. Macronutrients are the big players. I kind of consider it the 3 food groups. You may have learned it differently when you were a kid. There's the 5 food groups or the 4 food groups or something like that. I'd like to think about it more as the 3 food groups. It's the proteins, the carbohydrates, and the fats. And we are going to talk about what these contain as far as calories go, because so many times I've heard people say, you've told me to eat more protein, and I started doing that and I gained weight. Well, that tells you that not all foods are created equally, and I'll explain that in a second. Okay, so proteins are going to be a combination of animal proteins, plant proteins. You're going to have some mixed proteins like nuts and seeds, have some fat, have some protein. One thing I would not do is rely on peanut butter as a major source of protein. It does have some protein, but it's going to be, heavier in the fat. And actually, some of them have, quite a few carbohydrates too. So there's going to be a combination of the macronutrients within some foods. But if you're talking about eggs or a chicken breast, that is going to be pure protein for the most part. So that macronutrient has 4 calories per gram. I just want to make sure no one else is trying to get in. It has 4 calories per gram, and that's the same for carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have been demonized. I'm sure you have heard, or maybe you even feel like yourself, like you're bad if you have carbohydrates, or you should work to eat less and less and less. But carbohydrates are going to be really important for your training. They're going to be good for your thyroid health. If you have a sluggish thyroid already, if you already know this, doing intense exercises and reducing carbohydrates or eliminating or severely lowering the amount of carbohydrates you eat will kind of kick you in the butt down the road. It will probably backfire on you. It'll cause a more sluggish thyroid in most of the people I've seen. I've seen that happen in my own situation as well. So be mindful in using whole food carbohydrates to fuel your body. So with carbohydrates, we're looking at breads and grains, fruits, veggies, and then you can find them, of course, in processed foods. So these aren't lists of what I'm suggesting you eat these processed foods to get your carbohydrates. Um, of course, there are some processed foods that are worse than others. I'm talking about the ultra processed things that you should avoid, like Cheetos or things like that. Licorice, stuff like that are going to be those processed foods I'm suggesting that you try to avoid and eat more of the macros from foods that you can identify, right? You can see in these pictures what's what. Um, Going back to the mixed protein thing for a second, the person that I was talking about that was eating more protein because she was eating very little, I think like 50 grams a day. And I suggested she work up to, 80 just from where she was starting from over like a 3 week span of time. And she said she gained weight. We went through what kind of proteins she was doing or her food, just like a food journal. And it turns out that the proteins she was eating were all highly processed proteins. So this is where your body is not a bank account, it's not a calculator. There's actually a bunch of systems that come into play. And if you are eating highly processed proteins just to get the protein in, you're not doing yourself a favor. You're actually potentially having this whole process backfire on you. So what I learned was she was eating things like protein. I don't even know if they're called this, but they're essentially protein Doritos. They're some kind of chip. Can't remember what they're made from, but I had never heard of them. I hadn't seen them before. There's protein Pop-Tarts out there, I guess. That's not what I'm talking about. If you start consuming a lot of that on a regular basis, you will probably gain weight because there's so much other stuff in them, and that's not where we want to get our protein sources from. Okay, so I think I said this at the beginning, but if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and interrupt me, ask questions along the way, or you can wait till the end. Either way is totally fine with me, but just make sure that you get your questions answered. All right, the next macronutrients are going to be fats. This is an important one. And again, we want to go with more quality fats, right? So you're going to get fats naturally from animal products, like think of salmon and other kind of fatty fish. Think of oils like avocado oil, olive oil, macadamia nut oil, things like that. You don't want to be consuming really highly processed like vegetable oils or Crisco and things like that. Those would be considered ultra processed foods. And if you use those currently, work to kind of transform your pantry into better quality oils. And that's a whole thing. I could talk for an hour on oils. I won't do that. But we just need to start being more consumer savvy, I guess, about the different types of oils we're eating and getting from better quality sources because of labeling laws. They're able to cut it, cheapen it with vegetable oils, which are very inflammatory and can cause issues in the body, affect your metabolism, and kind of keep you from your goals. And especially if your body is stressed out. So just be mindful of that. Again, start with where you're at and work to improve the quality of each of these macronutrients that you're consuming on a regular basis. Obviously, if you're going through the fast food lines, you are going to be consuming fatty or fats that are, there's probably more fat in the food. and not in the good way. If you think of a fryer where there's probably soybean oil in the vat of, cooking up the French fries or whatever, and it is on such high heat to fry the potato strips or whatever it is that they're making the fries with. And that oil sits there and it's heated and heated and heated and heated and it oxidizes and it causes damage. It actually changes the structure of it, and that actually can change and kind of damage the structure of your cells within the body and help your or keep your body from running smoothly. There's going to be more inflammation produced inside your body that will keep you from the goals. So again, back to basics nutrition. Go back to the foods you can identify. Um, Olive oil coming from olives, avocado oil coming from avocado. But again, you have to do a little bit of research to find the best sources. Buying the giant one at Costco, I will tell you, is probably not going to be the best quality, but there's some better than others. Okay, so alcohol is not something I'm recommending to help support your workouts at Farrell's. However, it is considered a macronutrient and it will affect your progress. So I just wanted to put that in there so people understand that alcohol is a player in the nutrient intake. It's not that it's like working for you, it's kind of working against you because alcohol has 7 calories a gram, and I forgot to say fats have 9 calories per gram. They're more nutrient dense as far as, or I should say energy dense. It's going to help with satiety, keeping you full, keeping your blood sugar balanced. And then combining that with a protein with satiety, that's like kind of the magic bullet for keeping your appetite in check. Alcohol, on the other hand, is 7 calories per gram, so it adds, a few calories more per gram than proteins and carbohydrates. However, when it's in your system, it becomes priority fuel because it is a literal toxin to the body. So your body will work to get rid of it and go through the liver. The liver is the only thing that can process the alcohol so that it will, get out of your system and then it will dip into fat stores. So if you're trying to recomp your body and there's always alcohol present, even if you're having, a lot of people do, they'll cook with a glass of wine or they have a glass of wine at night or they have, a cocktail but to wind down at night. That's very common. I'm not shaming anybody about it. I'm just wanting you to know that if there's always alcohol present, it's going to be hard to reshape your body. So just, be aware of that, be mindful of it. And again, start with where you're at and make it better. So if you have, 3 nights a week where you're drinking alcohol, try to make it 2 nights a week and then 1 night a week and just keep on working to improve it or keep it for special occasions. And think about things like, do I really want this? Am I doing it just because it's the kind of the habit I'm in? Is it just the setting I'm in? Do I really need this? Do I really want it? And save it for things and times where you really actually want to have a beverage. All right. Any questions so far on the macros? Okay, I'm not going to go into all the micronutrients because it's a lot, so that wouldn't have time for that. But micronutrients then are what you get from the macronutrients in the form of vitamins and minerals, amino acids, antioxidants, things like that. So that's where those specific micronutrients go into the wheels and cycles that you learned about in 10th grade biology about how your body works. Those nutrients go into all the pathways in your body to make your body run well. And if you are eating a highly processed diet, then those nutrients, the macros and the micronutrients, are going to be lacking, and therefore you will feel it. It will show up in various symptoms, and that will look different for everybody. But it could be joint pain, it could be fatigue, it could be hormonal imbalance, it could be that you have a problem detoxifying things because your liver is bogged down. It could be a number of symptoms. Migraines, poor sleep, all that kind of thing comes into play. I see that on a regular basis. So if you optimize your nutrition, especially over time, you don't have to be perfect right away. You don't have to do everything all at once, but it will help you, especially in the long run. Set yourself up for success. Okay, so when I'm making recommendations for protein, and we'll talk a little bit in a second about what that looks like for you and give you some guidance. And we need to understand that we need to start with protein. So if I could say there's one rule I would have you kind of create for yourself is that when you are sitting down to decide what you're going to have for dinner, sitting down at a restaurant, breakfast, whatever, anytime you're planning your meals, your first thing should be what should my protein be? What is my protein source? And then work around it from there, then add the other macros accordingly. So there's some good animal sources. Of course, grass-fed, organic, whatever the cleanest versions of the animal sources you can get, the better. And then with plant proteins, those are great to mix into veggies and things like that, or have it as, an adjunct to the animal proteins that you're taking in. So legumes, lentils, tofu, edamame, quinoa, and there's, other grains too that will have some protein in there. Quinoa, as an example, has 8 grams of protein per cup, but it also comes with a lot of carbohydrates. And if you have poor blood sugar control, if are used to eating a highly processed diet, you might not be able to tolerate, I don't even know if I could eat a full cup of quinoa. I mean, I like it, but I don't know if I like it that much. So it's more, think of it as sort of a not a garnish so much. You want to kind of wrap it into other foods like your vegetables and things like that. That would probably be better tolerated and also help you manage your blood sugar better, as long as that might be a concern. It's a concern for more people than they think. They just don't realize that they have some problems with glucose. Any questions on plant proteins and animal proteins and that kind of thing? One of the things that this can be kind of a touchy subject for people. There's people that only eat plant sources for maybe like a philosophical reason, where with animal thinking about animals, and I totally get that. The thing about plant proteins biochemically is that they need to be combined to become complete protein. So you have all these essential amino acids in them and to be able to be the building blocks of your body, whereas animal sources are going to have the complete proteins in them just as they are. And so that's why sometimes it's not ideal, especially if you are dealing with blood sugar concerns. You're going to get a complete protein and feel, full and have that satiety and stuff like that if you are consuming animal sources. But I think it's very important to include plants in general as well. So try to think about what that looks like for you, what your tolerance to carbohydrates is, if you have symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation. If you have questions on that, I can answer that here in a little bit too. But I think it's really important to understand the differences between the protein and animal protein sources, and there's reasons for the recommendations. So, I said start with protein, and here's the general recommendation is to start with getting 100 grams of protein per day. What I would recommend that you do is that if you haven't really tracked your food, and maybe you are tracking your food already, and that's great, find out where you are on an average basis. Maybe you do it for 3 to 5 days or a week or whatever, maybe you have more data than that. But what is your average intake of protein per day? Now, if you are at 50, that's your starting point, and you're going to build slowly to that. But I caution you from, say, you're getting an average of 50 a day. I caution you from just adding 120 grams to your day. That is not going to feel very good on your belly. Your GI tract might struggle with breaking down those large protein molecules. Protein is super large, and it takes enough stomach acid as well as other digestive enzymes, good bile production in order to break down and process it, and then to assimilate the amino acids that come from the protein. So start slow and build from there. If you need digestive enzymes, if you need hydrochloric acid, reach out to me. I can give you a good recommendation of one that I use with my people. There's two different ones I use with my people on a regular basis. But you need to be mindful of that because that would not feel so great to just jump in all in out of the gate. So build to get to that 100. And the reason for the 100 grams is not just a random recommendation. There's science behind it. And the science says that when you consume 100 grams of protein per day, again, it doesn't matter if it's a just animal protein, just plant protein, or a combination of the two, but you will ensure that you're getting enough of a specific amino acid that will stimulate muscle cell protein synthesis. And that is what we want, especially when you're trying to build muscle and become leaner or to recomp your body. So ideally, your end goal will be 1 gram per pound of ideal lean body weight. But I like to work in ranges because sometimes 1 gram per pound seems kind of crazy. I've worked with some women who are 5'10", 6 foot tall, and their ideal lean body weight is 185 pounds, and they struggle with eating 185 grams of protein. So just using that example, I'm just gonna get my calculator here. I like to use the range of 0.8 to 1 gram per pound. So if the ideal lean body weight was 185, that would put you at 148 grams to 185 grams. So that is at the point in which you'll make sure that you're able to stimulate muscle cell protein synthesis, but you'll also be able to build muscle. You can't even build the muscle necessarily at 100 grams per day. And once women are going through perimenopause, menopause, and that kind of thing, and this applies to men too, but that might happen little bit later in life, you are less able to take the amino acids from the protein that you're consuming and kind of turn around and build muscle with it. You are anabolic resistant, right? So you are much less able to do that. So you technically need to probably push past that 1 gram per pound of ideal lean body weight, but we need a place to start. You got to get that 100 grams minimum. And if anybody listening to this is also taking a GLP-1 to help with weight loss, blood sugar control, inflammation, any of those reasons, that makes it a little bit more difficult to do because your appetite is now suppressed, but you need to eat the protein like it's your job. So this is not a fad. Social media would have you believe that this is just another fad, another diet ploy, another something, but there is science behind it. And it's really important, especially to fuel the workouts that I know that you'll be doing or maybe already are doing with Farrell's. So what that boils down to is about 30 to 50 grams of protein at each meal, depending on the size. That's just the range mostly of the women that I work with, and even some men. We usually push it further on men. They tend to be a little bigger, obviously, so we would go a little bit higher for them. So the goal is to consume about 3 meals per day and maybe a snack. And I know the recommendations for your plan are a little different than that because you're fueling yourself around your workouts as well. So, default to that. But the goal in general, when I'm looking at this, is to make sure to balance out your blood sugar. And if we're eating constantly all through the day, you're constantly spiking blood sugar to some degree and then causing insulin to have to react to it, right? So you're constantly causing this up and down in your blood sugar and insulin response, and that is not good for some people, right? If you already have some blood sugar dysregulation. So if you change your meal quality and then try to shrink your eating window to, a 10 to 12 hour eating window versus eating all day long, all night, you're going to naturally eat, 3 meals and maybe a snack. If you need a second snack, because I know some of these workouts are pretty intense, you might want one before, one after. Some people are working out super early in the morning, so you might want to have a snack little snack, complex carbs or protein right before you go in to your workout. That's going to help fuel your recovery as well. And then prioritizing resistance training is going to help you with that recomposition and making sure that your body is you know, paying off with all the efforts that you're putting into your workouts and your nutrition. Any questions on the protein? Okay. All right, so we said protein first. So when you get out your plate and you're like, what am I going to do for lunch? You're going to say, okay, what's my protein going to be? So you figure that part out, and then we're going to add the carbs and the healthy fats. This shouldn't say carb ration, it should say carb ratio. So the protein to carb ratio for metabolically stable people is a 1-to-1 ratio. So if, for example, your protein goal, your ideal protein goal is 150 grams, you're going to want to be at about 150 grams of carbohydrates. And then the rest of your remaining calories would be in fats, right? So the fats oftentimes will come with your protein. Sometimes you're going to cook in it. Sometimes you're going to put it on your salad for dressing and that kind of thing. So if you are not metabolically stable, meaning you've been diagnosed with metabolic syndrome, if you have a thyroid condition that maybe is undertreated, if you have PCOS, things like that, you might want to lower the carbs a bit here and there. Maybe 1 week you're eating lower carbs, or maybe 5 days a week you eat lower carbs. And what I mean lower, I mean, instead of 150, maybe you eat 100 grams, and then kind of toggle it up and down so that your body is kind of not going to be having the lack of fuel that it might need for recovery for your brain and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of switch around with it. But if anything, I would toggle the protein up and dial the carbs down. And then maybe the next week you keep your protein stable and maybe you keep your carbs at the same protein level, just to, see what your body's doing and make sure that you're nourishing it and fueling it efficiently, or, as much as it needs to handle these workouts that you're doing. When you round it out with these healthy fats, you're going to choose real whole food versions. We talked about that a lot. Some common examples would be butter, coconut oil, avocado, homemade salad dressings, and ghee. Ghee is just clarified butter. It's just the milk solids are taken out of it. It's really good for people who can't tolerate dairy, and so ghee would be an option for those people. And that's more for like dipping, or you can saute and stuff like that with it. So fats are good fuel for your muscles and good fuel for your brains, and it helps with satiety as well. So if you have good healthy fats in your diet with your meal, when you're balancing out your proteins, fats, and carbs, you are going to have good satiety and good blood sugar control. It's going to help with your appetite suppression. The protein, going back to that for a second, it will act by helping support your own natural GLP-1, and the fats can really kind of go along to support that as well. So it helps with that appetite suppression, or I guess you could say appetite control, just by having good balance of these things. Oh, I was just going to say one more thing about the carbohydrates. So people tend to be kind of afraid of these carbohydrates in general. I hear this a lot, like, I don't eat fruit because I don't want to gain weight, or I'm trying to lose weight, so I can't eat fruit. It makes me fat. People say this to me. But when we're talking about fruits and vegetables, and even if they're starchy vegetables and things like that, um, those are going to act very, very differently in your body than processed carbohydrates. Like, think of skinny popcorn, or potato chips, or Cheetos, or even some of these protein bars. They have kind of small amounts of protein in them and a lot of carbohydrates in them that are very processed. So those behave very different physiologically, biochemically, than like what's on this picture of the carbohydrates, whether they're starchy carbohydrates or not. So Don't be afraid of carbohydrates, but you may, depending on your blood sugar control, have to modify the type of carbs or the amount of carbs that you eat in one setting. But the rule of thumb is never eat a naked carb, right? Always have your carb with a protein, and sometimes that protein comes with fat. Even if you do a healthy fat with a carb, that's one thing, or that's another way to do it. A common example I would recommend would be like an apple with, like I love this, an apple with like crunchy peanut butter, something like that. You got a good carbohydrate with a healthy fat. I think of the protein, or I'm sorry, the peanut butter in that situation as basically a fat. There's a tissue protein in. I probably take about 2 tablespoons with my apple, something like that. It's not going to amount to a whole bunch of protein, but it helps the satiety with that snack. It can be very filling, and then there's good fiber in the apple as well. But a lot of times people won't eat apples because they are scared of the carbs and the sugar that apple, that, that kind of fruit might have. And oh yeah, let me just back up one more time. I want to say too that all carbs, all carbohydrates will convert into glucose in the body, which is your sugar, right? So it doesn't matter, again, looking at this picture, it doesn't matter if it's an onion or a piece of broccoli or a papaya. It's going to convert into glucose or fructose into the body, no matter what kind of carbohydrate it is, but it's going to behave very differently if it comes with fiber and antioxidants and amino acids and minerals than if it's just something that is, a highly processed item. Okay, these are the top nutrition mistakes that I see, especially in overachievers that are doing pretty intense workouts, whether it's, with at a gym or at home or whatever. They're not needing enough protein. We don't need to go on about protein. I think you got the message on that pretty clear. Skipping meals, which is easy to do, so easy to do because we are busy. We have such busy lives. And skipping meals is easy. Um, then what we do is we sometimes overeat because we're so hungry. Our blood sugar drops, and then we'll eat anything in sight. And it's usually in that situation, you're usually not creating, like, or craving veggies and like hummus, right? You're craving quick fix, sugary, carby, caffeine types of things to get you over the hump. So we can also overdo healthy carbs. So that's kind of things we've been talking about when we think of like skinny pop popcorn. I hear people say that I can't possibly eat any more protein in the day. I am so full, but somehow they can squeak out, half a bag of skinny pop while they're watching Netflix. They could fit that healthy carb in there and they think it is because of the marketing and the labeling and things like that. So people overdo those things when if they just ate more protein, they wouldn't even be craving that kind of stuff. And then if we undereat, that will 9 times out of 10 lead to overeating. So we need to, again, just not to skip the meals and then eat enough protein. And then we're going to have a lot more balanced nutrient intake. Okay, so then this is the other thing that I see is this is healthy, but it's not working kind of trap. So this is where people make fruit smoothies where it's basically just it's almost like a milkshake going through the drive-through or whatever because it's all fruit and maybe like drizzle with agave or maple syrup or whatever, but there's very little protein in it. There's very little fat in it. There's sugar from the milk people put in it. There's sometimes juice added to it. There's no fiber, all of those kinds of things. So if you are doing a smoothie, because you think it's healthy for you because it's all these blended veggies or I mean fruits and stuff, and there's no fiber and anything like that, you are probably working against yourself. So make sure there's protein in there, even if it's a good quality protein powder. And then maybe a healthy fat, drizzle in some olive oil before you blend it up. Things like that would be a lot better option. If you eat oatmeal just by itself, not with some good protein with it, maybe some healthy fat that goes with it. I think oatmeal with a little bit of, like a peanut butter type of thing or almond butter type of thing, and maybe some turkey sausage or chicken or however you like to eat the oatmeal would be a good way to do that. Just don't eat it alone. That would fall into the never eat a naked carb type of thing. And then salads with no protein. So a lot of people will just, do like a side salad and it's pretty much romaine lettuce, maybe some tomatoes, and then whatever kind of dressing. You got to have the protein on it. And then eating snacks all day long. That is, even if they're healthy, right? Even if they're a protein bar, those types of things, if you're doing that all day long, that kind of becomes a trap and you are more than likely working against yourself. So let's look at a couple menus for back to basics nutrition. Um, we're looking at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm looking at approximate protein levels here, but this is how we combine proteins, fats, and carbs. And this is very identifiable and easy to see because of eating real whole foods. So for breakfast, here's an example. Everybody, I swear, everybody eats just 2 eggs. But if you ate 3 eggs, you're going to get about 18 grams of protein from that. 2 strips of bacon is going to be about 16 grams. So that'll give you about 34 grams of protein right there. You can cook the eggs in some oil if you wanted, maybe a little bit of butter. Doesn't have to be a lot. And then you can saute some veggies like what's good, think of like omelet type veggies, peppers and onions, things like that. So that will give you some good antioxidants. It's a carbohydrate. It'll give you good fiber, but it's not super carbohydrate dense, meaning it doesn't going to convert into glucose. There's not much glucose it'll convert into because they don't have a lot of starch in them. These veggies like peppers and onions and things like that. And then round it out with some berries. There's tons of antioxidants with them, right? They're considered kind of a superfood. There's fiber that comes with them. They have all those pigments in the fruits and the vegetables we eat. The color actually tells us something about the food we're eating. This is going to be a nutrient dense breakfast. So if you are someone who needs more protein than that, then you can adjust, right? You could add a different type of, instead of bacon, maybe you can add a type of protein with it that has more protein per serving, or maybe you add a little bowl of Greek yogurt or something like that to add to it. So this is what you need to do to just sort of modify it, but start with something and then add to it. Now, let's look at lunch. So, this is kind of one of my favorite things to do. If I have leftover steak or chicken or whatever it is, throw that on a salad. So, if I have 5 ounces of leftover steak, that's going to be about 8 grams of protein per ounce. So, that's going to give me 40 grams of protein in that salad. I'm going to have mixed greens. I'm going to try to make the greens more nutrient dense. I'm not going to use just like iceberg lettuce. I'm going to try to do mixed spring greens, throw some spinach in there, things like that. And then I'm going to make a homemade dressing with my olive oil. I'm going to put the seasonings in it that I like. I also like to add a little, like, I don't know, you can get them in little rounds of that Boursin cheese. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's like a cheese spread kind of thing. And I think there's other brands too, and I just shake it up with whatever seasoning. It makes it a little bit creamy, and it's just a good clean salad dressing. And I just make it sort of as I'm making my food. I don't make a big batch of it and keep it. I just make it kind of as I use it. And I guarantee if you eat a lunch that has much better protein, if you get that 40, even to 50 grams of protein at your lunch, you're not going to have the energy dip at 3 p.m. because your blood sugar will be nice and stable as long as you're adding the good, healthy fats and carbohydrates to this meal. You could also add some starchy carbohydrates. Maybe you have leftover sweet potato or leftover potatoes. Maybe you just add a little bit on the side with this meal as well. Or maybe you throw in some other fruit. Something like that to up the nutrient density of your meal is going to be super important, again, to fuel your energy and to fuel your workouts and your recovery, depending on when you're working out. And then dinner, so maybe, tis the season of, grilling season. Whip up some chicken breasts, grab a 7 ounces of chicken breast. That'll give you 49 grams of protein. Maybe grill up or roast some vegetables, like a mixed vegetables. You could have starchy carbs like sweet potatoes or regular potatoes, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, peppers, onions, things like that, and roast them all on one pan. Make it super simple and have enough so that you can make for leftovers for the next day. So those are some good ways to kind of capitalize on your efforts in the kitchen and have good quality meals so you're not stuck so that you skip a meal. Like what we said was one of the mistakes that I see on a regular basis and something I fall into as well. It's hard to do sometimes to always have, food handy that is going to be good and healthy for you. So this would just be a very simple example where this person would get what 75 like about 100, over 100 grams of protein pretty easily here. Like 120 or so. So this would be a good way to get that. And this doesn't even include the snack. So if you have a snack or maybe two, depending on your workouts, you might get some other protein in there. You're going to be easily pushing, 130, 140 grams of protein just from this simple example. So this is with real whole food. You don't have to rely on protein shakes and protein bars and protein chips and protein Pop Tarts in order to make this happen. And this is going to make you feel a lot more energetic. You're going to have better brain energy. You're not going to have that brain fog. You're going to have better balanced blood sugar, and you're going to support your body over time by doing this on a consistent basis. All right, so if there aren't any questions, this would be all we are going to be going through today, and I would love to answer any questions if you have, so you can feel free to reach out. My Instagram is Tiffany Flaten. My YouTube channel, which is basically my podcast, is at Rock Bottom Wellness, and I take private pay, but I also take insurance for people's services. And so far, these listed here, most people have crazy good coverage for the nutrition services that I do. So if that is something of interest to you, you can just email me at hello@tiffanyflaten.com and I can get some information to you if you want me to check insurance benefits for you, or if you have any other questions. I'll definitely feel, be so happy to answer those questions for you. So you can be willing, you can reach out to me anytime. I'm totally willing to help you out with that, and go from there. So I hope you have had a good, if this has been helpful, I hope it's been good for you. I hope you can apply this and support your goals with your workouts at Farrell's. Are there any questions? Let's see here. Okay. My computer is lagging. Just 1 second here. Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. So very welcome. All right. If that is all, maybe we'll see you around next time, but have a good night. And again, reach out if you have any questions. All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.